Welcome back to Reclaim Within. I'm Ash, and today we're going to explore the transformative practice of sacred discipline, what it means, how it can empower you, and why it's a pathway to reclaiming your divine gifts. Discipline often gets a really bad reputation. It conjures up ideas within us of rigid rules, of control, tactics, or punishment. But what if discipline could actually be an act of love and devotion? Together, we are going to unpack this concept and discover how sacred discipline can help you live in alignment with your highest or truest self, your soul self, your true essence, whatever you want to call it. Use the words that fit you best. My hope is by the end of the episode, you're going to feel like you understand this concept, that you feel inspired to reframe discipline as a practice of self-love and devotion, and equipped for your daily life and align yourself more to your own sacredness of your own being. So let's start off with the fact of why am I sharing this? I have had the most wild life experience with discipline, and it actually goes very far, far back. I think a lot of us were raised in a cultural upbringing or the overculture where a lot of shame tactics were used, and I don't think that's anyone's fault. I think that was inherited. If you listen to the last episode on the ancestral echo, we talk about how behavioral patterns are often passed down. So for me, I was raised in a Catholic home, and I love God. I have a beautiful relationship with God. I absolutely adore the sacred. Hence, a lot of my work is literally wrapped around it. And yet, a lot of what I was raised in my experience, there was a lot of shame and a lot of guilting and a lot of punishment around the sacred. I was actually reflecting why this episode and why this topic is so sacred to me, why it's so important. And I feel like a lot of us are taught that discipline is something that happens from the outside in, not the inside out. And yet when I was able to reshape my relationship with discipline and cultivate it from the inside out versus the outside in, oh my gosh, my world has completely transformed. I feel like I'm able to orient to my dreams and my desires in a completely different way. But it's taken a lot of time to purge and shift. And so my hope is that through some of these stories, you might relate and find ways that you can actually shift yourself. So my first story that I remember around this concept of discipline and how it felt like a punishment to me is I would have to go to confession as a kid in Catholic school. Or I didn't go to Catholic school, but there's catechism classes that happen on Thursdays. And I needed to go to confession. And so they're like, okay, you're going to go in, you're going to tell the priest what you've done wrong. I couldn't think of anything I did wrong. I'm like, I didn't want to, it was so confusing to me to sit there and be like, how can I perceive myself as a bad person and go and tell this priest how bad I am? And so I couldn't think of anything. And I told the teacher, I was like, I can't think of anything. And she's like, everyone can think of something that is wrong with them, basically, that they've done wrong. And I was like, okay. So I go in and I sit down and I told him, I hit my brother. And he goes, oh, that's not great. And I was like, well, I didn't actually hit my brother. And that's a lie. So I just sinned, like on the spot, just to make it out, super rebel, right? And he was so upset with me, and he would go say 5 Hail Marys and 10 Our Fathers, and lying isn't okay. He was just like appalled. So I went out and I sat down, and it just felt like a punishment. It felt punitive. It felt like I was being disciplined because I couldn't think of how I wasn't a good person. I don't know, that example just sticks out the most in my mind. I was also pretty young when that happened. So my relationship with discipline from a really young age wasn't so great. It didn't work very well for me. I rebelled against it fairly hard. Later on in high school, I was on the dance team and I loved dance. It felt so good to me. I had this innate desire to move my body. I just loved it. And it was about my sophomore year, I think, of the dance team. And we got a new dance teacher. And she came in and just was, oh my gosh, she would punish us for talking by making us do more, I don't remember, leaps across the room or something like that. And it just took this thing that I had so much love for, and I genuinely cared about the routines and what we did. I actually went on to later be captain of the dance team in college, so it's not like it went away forever, but I did end up quitting. I quit my high school dance team because I felt like the fun was sucked out of it by this discipline, this punitive, shameful, you do what I say or you're going to get punished, right? Type of discipline. And so, time goes on and I I think what happened over time is I got further and further away from my own relationship with discipline because it felt like such a rejection of my essence or my sacred self. I felt so unseen by these people using these punitive discipline punishments to get me to do what they wanted and not really feeling like they saw me at all. And even later in college, a choir professor, it was just the way that she went about wanting me to do these vocal rounds again and again. It was so externally, you'll do what I say. And I also ended up quitting choir. So, needless to say, I've had a very long journey with really rejecting and rebelling against this punitive type of discipline. What happened though is at some point I got really into yoga, and it was the first time that I felt myself having a practice that I felt like I loved so much that nobody was going to distort or make it unfun anymore. And it really shifted. And I would get up and I'd go to yoga sometimes twice a day at this yoga studio. And it was the first time I remember having a healthy relationship with discipline, because a lot of what I encountered in all the other areas where discipline was being used kind of against me or as a shame or guilt tool, that eventually became my relationship with discipline, which is what happens for all of us. Our early life, it make these grooves or imprints, and so we perceive the world not necessarily as it is, but we perceive the world through the lens of the experiences that we've had. And so a lot of these experiences I've had really turned me away from having my own relationship with discipline, because I didn't want to use it as a whipping tool. And so instead of embodying discipline in this way that was going to have this embodied, I don't know, shame towards myself, I just rejected it completely. You might have done something different with it. You might have gone through some similar experiences like I did, but instead of completely rejecting or running away or quitting things like I did, which is very opposite of discipline, you might have actually engaged with it and made it a part of you. Maybe you have a very overbearing voice inside of you that tells you what you need to do and why you need to do it. And if you don't do this, then you're going to have to do that, right? There's like a lot of ways that all of us have experienced this form of discipline that's actually very hurtful, and it's actually pulled us away from our sacred selves, our essence, our truest form of self. And so I feel really blessed that I found this relationship with discipline in a way that actually felt fulfilling and joyful around the time that I found yoga. And then this last 7 to 10 years of my life, I've been pursuing teachers and mentors and guides who have been able to really hold a different reality of what discipline is, a different frequency of what discipline is, so that I can purge what I've embodied that it actually is a really not loving, respectful form of discipline. So that's where this concept of sacred discipline has come from. It's from my own lived experience of actually feeling very not embodied in sacred discipline and really rebelling against the discipline that did show up in my life. So sacred discipline actually becomes a practice of choosing alignment over distraction, integrity over chaos. So let's back up. Looking back now, I've been able to reshape the stories around me quitting dance and choir, which are two things that still to this day I love very dearly. And in those moments when I felt so thwarted because it felt like I was being controlled or shamed, I actually chose my own inner alignment in those moments over the chaos or distraction from those people that were in those authority roles. And I'm actually really proud that I stayed integral to myself and didn't allow for anyone to pull me down or take my spirit or my joy or the things I cared about and loved so much away from me. I still dance to this day, I still sing to this day, and it didn't get to consume me. And so sacred discipline really isn't about following rigidity or being controlled. It's actually about creating a foundation that nurtures my values, creativity, and my connection to life. I wasn't very skillful back then. I probably wouldn't just flat out quit now, but in those younger years, I didn't have any other tools to pull from. Now I'm able to actually reorient myself so that I don't allow for other people's shaming tactics or control to take over my connection to life and what brings me joy. So how have you been relating to discipline in your life? And have you been able to align yourself to integrity and to your own connection to what is important to you? Discipline as a sacred act is the devotion to honoring the sacredness of life, both within us and around us. So that includes the people that are closest to us in our lives, treating those around us with as much sacredness as we treat ourselves. And when we start to really reorient to the sacredness of life and do so as a discipline, it's very liberating. It's a very relieving experience. It's the opposite of restrictive. And it allows us to fully let go of any of those distractions or distortions trying to keep us in a contained or out of alignment place. So, how can you treat yourself as a sacred being? This to me means ensuring that my thoughts, my words, and my actions all reflect the integrity of who I am and the sacredness of this life that I'm living. It's important for me to make sure that I'm not having thoughts on the inside and then acting differently on the outside, right? That I find ways to bridge and pull together all parts of my being so that I don't have resentment brewing internally, but act sugary sweet on the outside. That to me is actually that would be a place where I would need more sacred discipline in my life to align me to more of my sacred truth. Sacred discipline is not about controlling self or other, and it's not about shaming. It's about nurturing habits that sustain our soul, bring us closer to our essence, and allow us to show up fully in life. So if I'm feeling resentful on the inside, but externally I'm appearing to be sugary sweet, I'm disrespecting my truth. I'm disrespecting what's happening on the inside. And so what I would need to do in that moment is some self-care. What do I need? Resentment usually comes from feeling like somebody else is able to do or have their needs or desires met where we are not. So a lot of times when resentment comes up, it's a place where we actually need to have healthier connection to boundaries and be able to orient to what do I feel like I am not getting right now that maybe someone in my life is. That's where the resentment might be brewing. And then having the discipline to, one, sit with yourself and connect with what that might be, not distracting yourself away from yourself, really sitting with, why am I feeling resentful? What do I feel like I am not able to get that I really desire to have? Or what need do I feel like is not being met? And then being able to start to share that with somebody who it feels safe to share that with. It might not be the person, but it might be somebody that you feel like you can confide in, right? A guide, a coach, a therapist, a trusted friend. I really am having this resentment come up, but I'm not telling the person about it. Can you help me find the words so that I can align my thoughts, my inner world with my words and put them into action by having the conversation? That takes a lot of sacred discipline. Sacred discipline could look like creating space for rest when you need it, setting boundaries that protect your energy, or choosing to honor your body with nourishing food and movement. Sacred discipline is about reclaiming your life, one intentional moment at a time. When we cultivate this sacred discipline, we are naturally creating an environment within ourselves where others rise naturally then to meet us there. The thoughts, beliefs, and actions that we nurture within our own inner reality shape the outer reality that we experience. This is not about perfection, but about learning to hold space for the sacred to flourish. And the more disciplined that we are in honoring our truth, then the more authentic our relationships will become, and the more meaningful our work will feel, and the deeper our connection to divinity will grow. Sacred discipline is about allowing us to create a life that aligns with our essence and inspires others to do the same. Sacred discipline is not something that we are going to master overnight, any of us. It's an ongoing practice. It's about making space for each and every one of our divine essence to shine and reclaiming the gifts that have always been within you. As I grew up, even though I had quit choir and I was very passionate about it, I found ways to honor my truth and to continue to sing. It's maybe not in the same way that I once did, but it's really a devotional path of reclaiming, why did I sing in the first place? Because it felt so good to me. It feels so authentic to my essence. I love that other people love to hear me sing. It feels so good to me, and then it feels so good to them. And oh my gosh, how much fun is that? We all feel good together. It's such a gift of divinity. It's such a gift from divinity. And so if I were to let somebody else shame me or guilt me into like the way I'm supposed to use it or the how often I'm supposed to use it, I would have maybe lost that connection to myself and to that part of me that feels so authentic in just letting myself sing. So this devotional path of discipline, reshaping it in this way, allows each of us to actually be able to honor our unique roles in this life and build an inner kingdom that sustains through life's joys and challenges. There's a lot of challenges in this life. We meet a lot of challenges. And if I'm shaming myself or blaming myself or guilting myself or, feel like if I don't do this, then I'm going to punish myself, I'm going to miss the opportunity of connecting with what I love and letting that be the guiding force. More of what I love is what sacred discipline is all about, being disciplined about what you love and what brings you joy and what brings you light. So take a minute and reflect on how you might bring more sacred discipline into your life. What practices or choices could help you realign with your highest values, with what brings you joy. And if you're feeling called to explore this further, I would love to support you. I currently do have some space for one-on-one clients. If you're ready to embrace more of this practice and reshape your relationship to sacred discipline, you're also invited to subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. For any bonus insights, reflections, and upcoming workshops, all of that information will be put there. So let's walk this path of sacred living together. Let's reshape our relationship to these concepts together so that we get to be in honor, in dignity, and in integrity with life. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into sacred discipline. May you find courage to align with your truth, to honor your divine essence, and to live a life rooted in the sacred. Until next time, many, many blessings to you.